systems are really critical, right?
Yeah.
So even think about there's some really large businesses that have scaled, whether it's the Four Seasons, whether
Yeah.
it's Disney, you name it,
Yep.
right? They found a way to scale that. And the way that you scale it in the fitness business is you put systems in place, right?
Mhm.
So that's the biggest thing. If you're trying to scale yourself, that's again that's a losing proposition, right? You have to put the right systems in place to make sure that the things that you want to have happen are really important.
Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. I'm super stoked because I have a brand new guest on the podcast for the first time who's got an incredible story and so much to teach all of us. So let's welcome to the podcast, Joe Maglio. What's up, my friend?
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me. I'm excited to dig in today.
Thank you so much for being here. I've heard your name over the years so many times. I know you and Mark Fisher have connected a ton, and I'm so excited to have you on today because you're the founder and CEO of GameChanger Fitness, which you launched in 2013, and you've just recently opened up your 13th location, which is wild, which is so wild. So first, just congratulations on nailing life, my friend.
I don't know about that, but I appreciate it.
I think a lot of people listening to this podcast will be like, "Damn, 13 locations in that amount of time is pretty impressive." You've been busy.
Yes, certainly have been. And it's been a quick 12 years. So
Yeah, yeah, it flies by when you're having fun. Maybe for folks who don't know Game Changer Fitness or just meeting you for the first time on this podcast, maybe just give like your 2 minute backstory of how you got started in 2013.
yeah, let's dig in. So I started basically out of college. I was probably a year and a half or 2 years removed from college. I was a trainer, coach for probably 5 years throughout college, and then thereafter, and then I went on to my own. And I started my business inside of a baseball facility. Actually, it was
Yep.
probably 500 square feet. I was subleasing space, and I was training baseball players. So the business we have today is not the business I started. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I started there, and we were there for probably about a year and a half. I grew our athlete program, and then we started to build our adult program. Also, probably I don't know 6 months to a year in, I want to
Hmm.
say. Was in some business fitness masterminds, and that was the thing to do, right? So
Yeah.
started to do that, fell into it, really moved into our location we still have today. It's our HQ location. It's a 6,000 square foot warehouse, and we just built our business. So I really leaned in, and I was operating that one business for 2013 really through 2020. Through COVID, I would say, really is where
Mm.
I spent most of my time. And it was probably in 2018 where we started to expand a bit. I had an opportunity to purchase a location in Maryland, which is not where I'm located. I'm in Jersey,
Yep.
and I took that opportunity, and we started to apply our systems, our marketing, our training systems to that business, and we continued to grow that business. And at that time, I had good team members, but I didn't really know what my vision was. I didn't have a plan, right? Like my plan was, I was out of school, my head was down on my business, I was growing my one location. I had some good team members. We were introduced to EOS at the time,
Oh, great.
and that's when we implemented it in our business, and we put a vision in place, right? I started to visualize what I wanted for my business and where we wanted to go. And that was going the route of scaling our core program, which is our personal training in a small group format. And we wanted to put it in its own four walls. So it started with that Maryland location.
Hmm.
And we started to take some team members we had and started to give them opportunities to grow within our business and expand our location. So we did our third one in September of 2019. That was the same week my son was born, actually.
Oh, wow.
And
That's a busy week.
busy week, yeah, for sure. I think great. I still have a great partner who ran that location and was able to get it really launched. Then we dealt with the storm of COVID. We did our
Hmm.
fourth location in 2021. And let's see, I spent probably the next 2 years really building infrastructure and the team that was needed and the vendors that were needed to continue to scale. So we did two locations in 2023. We went into 2024 with six. We doubled in
Hmm.
size. Last year we added a couple more, so we're at 13 today. But we took our core program that we felt that we could be really world class at, start to put it in its own four walls, and that's really the business model that we expanded, but it certainly wasn't the business that started, and it wasn't the
Mhm.
business that I left when I had at my one monster location,
Sure.
right? Where we had multiple different programs going on. We had athlete
Yeah.
training. We had a large group adult program. We just
You've
simplified it.
simplified, streamlined. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the 2 minute version.
Well, that's an amazing story, Joe. And I love so much about that is embedded in your story is already a ton of kind of best practices that I know we talk about a ton on this podcast. We talk about a ton with our Unicorn Society members, right? Things like finding an operating system like EOS to run your business consistently, streamlining as you want to grow and scale, making things simpler, offering less options, getting rid
Yeah.
of all the complexity, right? You're a walking example of a lot of things that, we tell a lot of people to do, but you actually did it, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Maybe let's just go back. 'Cause I have a ton of questions about growing and scaling and all that, but I want to go back just for a moment and just kind of linger at your kind of humble beginnings in that 500 square foot space. What what happened in that 500, 600 square foot space back in the day that's still part of your DNA today? What did you learn in those early years that still you still carry with you?
Yeah, I think being scrappy is the
Mm,
first one. I remember going on Craigslist, finding equipment, driving
yeah,
to Long Island and New Jersey to pick up equipment and all that. We certainly have evolved from that today, but I think that idea of especially because everything is still bootstrapped, right? I don't have any
hmm,
outside investors or anything like that.
that's
So I
great.
think making sure that whenever we make investments in our business, that there's a plan to get a return on that investment, and that it's a sound business decision. I think that would be one. At the time, I didn't really have a plan to hire staff and do all that, but I was invested in growing my business, invested in growing myself. I think that I knew my business was only going to go as far as I was able to take it,
Yeah,
and I think continuing to at one time maybe it was learning more in the fitness space, and certainly that evolved to learning more in the business space. But I think that would be one of the tried and true principles that I applied, was just my own personal and professional development was going to be key to
yeah.
whatever I wanted to build.
Yeah, good for you, Joe. I think we often say when we onboard new Unicorn Study members that 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 you are often the bottleneck to the growth of your own business, right? That you are the
100%.
thing. Your skills and your mindset are the things that are often holding things back. And the fact that you continue to grow and develop yourself is huge. I also really love the point of keeping things scrappy. I think too often when people grow and scale, they think they get above finding equipment on Facebook Marketplace. They think they get above cleaning the toilets and laying the flooring themselves, but I think the fact that you're kind of keeping things scrappy and bootstrapped meant you didn't have to go find outside investors, was part of the equation at least. But I think that's really smart. Let me ask you this. So obviously open up 11 locations, I'm sorry, 13 locations at this point is huge. And it sounded like there was at one point, I think you said 2018, where things kind of turned for you and a switch flipped, so to speak. Can you just talk a little bit about in that moment, you were like, you know what, I'm going to go for it. Let's open some new damn locations. Um, what were some of your kind of guiding principles as you're thinking about, where to put them, how big they should be, how to streamline the model? Can you just kind of go through what some of your kind of guiding principles or philosophies were when you decided you were ready to scale?
Yeah, I think the first one was that I had a really successful first location,
Mm,
and I had the right people to go and do it. I had some, I would say, constraints in place, right? I knew that doing a second location, a third location, it wasn't going to be me being there day to day running it. So I was really clear that I needed the right team members to help facilitate that. So I think that was everything. If I didn't have that,
yeah,
I wasn't going to go and do more. So I think if you're thinking about scaling, really the options are, okay, you need to go find someone else to go and build that next location with, or that team, or you need to make sure that your first location is rock solid, and then maybe you're going to be that person who does rinse and repeat on the next one. So I think that was really the
yeah,
critical, is knowing that it's easy to see the opportunity in things, but knowing what you're truly signing up for, and
hmm,
knowing what the opportunity costs are, I think is really, really important, right? If I went in saying, hey, I'm going to do a second location, and I didn't really put that constraint on it, and I said, you know what, it could be me, but I'm still going to run my first one. I mean, now that's a losing proposition. So I think being really clear on what your strengths are and how you're going to apply that to the growth that you want to have, whether
yeah,
that's the unit or a single unit, I think is really important. So I think that was probably the most important thing. Did I have the right team members around me to help support the growth that we were after? And the answer was yes. And
yeah.
stuck to that plan. And during that time, I stayed. That's why, like in 2018 to 20, I was still running our main location, developing team members there and getting ready for what future growth was. And I would say our second, third, and fourth location were more opportunistic than strategic. And I think that was okay, right? I didn't have this grand plan and everything. We didn't even have our model ironed out specifically when we did our second one, which isn't necessarily something I would advise on
Sure.
today. But we thought we had it mapped out. But
Yeah.
when we got into it, we realized, okay, maybe there's an even simpler way to do this, right? We kept making things more simple, and so I think that was really important. We had a game plan and we did have a model, but as we got into it, we even simplified it a bit more, and with the right team, we were able to make that come to life. So I think those would be like the
That
guiding
makes
principles.
sense. Yeah, you were confident enough, you had a plan, and you were comfortable also iterating, knowing that it may not have been final, and it wasn't. You changed
Yeah,
it a few more times. So I'll just ask a follow up question to that. So you said you asked yourself if you had the right people on your team, and you said I did. And this might sound a little bit like reductive, but how did you know they were the right people?
yeah, it's a great question. So they were all in, right? They wanted
Mm,
growth. I knew that they showed up every day, and they were working really hard, and this was their career, and they wanted to
yeah,
grow with us. And I always looked at it as my job to go all in first, and then I would hope to get
yeah,
that back from a team member, and that clearly was the case. They were invested in my business, and they wanted to grow, and I felt an obligation to make that happen.
yeah,
Right. So I think that was it. It was the actions and behaviors that show up every single day.
yeah.
Right. And that's really important. You can say whatever you want and you can talk a big game, but what actually is happening every single day with your team members, and what, behaviors are they displaying? And that spoke for itself.
Yeah, well said, my friend. We often refer to that as give a shitness, right? It's hard to teach someone to really care and give a shit and want to show up and do their best, and that kind of person really stands out when you can build a team of people who really give a shit and really really show up every day like it matters to them.
Yeah,
That's an unstoppable team. Yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah. Let me ask you this. So I talk to a lot of gym owners who are on the precipice of scaling, like they're right there, staring over the hill, knowing what to do, but really nervous about pulling that trigger and opening multiple locations. And one of the things that often rises to the top when I ask them, well, what are you nervous about? What are your big fears? They often talk about that the fear of not being able to maintain consistency and quality, the ability to not really scale like great community vibes and kind of personal care, right? They worry about scaling the kind of human touch part of the business when they get too big or too many locations. In part because, as you know, when you're small, you get to know all your clients by name. You have a relationship with them. And as you scale, you have your team who's kind of in between you and your clients, and you can't have a relationship with every single one. And it makes them nervous to have to try and scale up relationships. So they get nervous that quality is gonna dip, or the community vibe is gonna change, or that clients won't feel like they're getting the same level of care as they grow. How do you combat that as you've scaled?
Systems are really critical, right?
Yeah.
So, and even think about, there's some really large businesses that have scale, whether it's the Four Seasons, whether
Yeah.
it's Disney, you name it,
Yep.
right? They found a way to scale that. And the way that you scale it in the fitness business is you put systems in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest thing. If you're trying to scale yourself, that's a losing proposition, right? You have to put the right systems in place to make sure that the things that you want to have happen are really important. So we can get tactical here for a second. Like if greeting someone by first name, with a smile on your face is super important, you need to put a system in place for that, right? How are you measuring that? How are you giving feedback around that? How are you coaching that? So those are the types of things. So what are the behaviors? You have to get really specific with the behaviors that you want to see, right? And then those are the things you give feedback on and that you measure with your team, right? And if
Yeah.
it's important, that's how you scale it, in my opinion. But it
Yeah.
requires systems and understanding the behaviors associated with what you want to see.
Yeah, really well said, Joe. Great answer. I think that's so smart, and I think a lot of our Unicorn Side members get sick of me telling them that when I worked at the Four Seasons, we would role play on like an almost daily basis. the smallest things that they would not even imagine that people would need to be practicing. Things like greeting people in a hallway. Just how do you pass a guest in a hallway, right? Are things that we would talk about and practice and had standards for. And so I think, I think it's just spot on that to think about your gym in the same way as what are the key observable behaviors you want your managers to be looking out for, what your team to be caring about, and then practicing them, and putting your time and energy on actually repeating those behaviors over and over again. So it's easy to get right and hard to get wrong. I think that's so smart. And when it comes to some of the customer service stuff, what do you think for you has been some of the most important behaviors to really cement on your teams?
Yeah, I think it's creating that atmosphere where it feels like Cheers when people come in.
Yeah,
So it's definitely using people's. It's how to win friends and influence people, right? And
yeah,
really
exactly.
everything out, right? So using
Yep,
people's names often, being outwardly focused on them and not yourself, right? So I think those are some of the things that really come to mind. Knowing about their families, their kids, it's asking those questions, right? So those are the important, what everyone calls the soft skills, are extremely important. So those are the types of behaviors, and you can see that right when you're interviewing people.
of
There's things
course.
that you can look for in that. And when we do our onboarding, I'll just give a tactical example here.
Please.
When we're onboarding someone new, their first couple days is we want to debrief and know like who did you meet today, what were their names, and what did you learn about them, right? What are their kids' names? What do they do for a living? What do they do for fun? What town are they coming from? So those are things that maybe are often overlooked and people think that are just going to happen, but you can't assume it, right? So if it's important, you have to train it and you have to debrief it and you have to talk about it, right? But those are tactical examples of the things that we're talking about, because that's like the rapport building stage of a relationship, and with that rapport, that's the foundation, right? And then you can get into other things, but I think that's really important. So
Yeah.
required reading for us, how to win friends and influence people. I think that, and taking some of the lessons from that and applying it and debriefing that at the end of a coaching shift or what have you is really important. Now we didn't talk anything about squats or push-ups, because like that those soft skills is how you really systemize it, and you can get into the technical side.
Yeah.
But those would just be some really specific examples.
Yeah, well said, Joe. I mean, I think there's a reason why we less and less people are calling them the soft skills these days, is because they're really the hardest skills for a lot of folks, right? It's not the soft stuff. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this about your model, because you started off, as you just mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, you started off, working mainly with youth athletes. Baseball, I think, was the main sport, right?
Yeah,
And now these days, you're focused mostly on clients over 40, right? And so
right.
I'm just curious, what inspired you to focus on clients over 40 as kind of your main demographic? I know it's super underserved one. Boomers are aging, so it makes sense to me. But when did that pivot happen for you, and how was that decision made?
Yeah, it happened when we moved to these smaller locations that we're
Mm-hmm.
currently doing now. Our typical size location now is 1,400 to 2,000. So we're typically in that 16 to 1,700 square
Mm-hmm.
foot. And I think that's really important because you mentioned it, it's an underserved market. And what we do is really accessible for that person. Where if you look at their alternative options, there's not that many great ones for them, right? It could be another boutique fitness concept, but that concept and experience is really designed for someone who maybe loves working out, is already in awesome shape, and can do repetitive exercises at a high intensity, right,
Mm-hmm.
over and over again. So that experience is not really designed for them, right? So I really think it's we've been very intentional about our model, our design, and I think it's just really accessible for the people that we service, and they don't have a lot of great alternatives. It could be that you could be stepping into a big box gym, maybe doing some personal training there, but again, there's a lot of hurdles for them. So I think being able to understand what someone is looking for and being able to strip back all the bottlenecks and
Yep.
obstacles in the way of getting them started have been super important, and that's really what we focused on. So I think our model just works really well for that type of person. Where
Mm-hmm.
I talk to other gym owners, and if you've got a different model, like that may not be your market, right? And what have you. So I think our market is really determined by like the experience we provide, the
Mm-hmm.
locations we have, and all that. So I think that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen. I mean, you're talking to your core avatar here, Joe. I'm over 40. I've never been someone who loves working out, and I wish I had a Game Changer Fitness nearby. I would totally go. It's hard to find options, right? We were just talking about. I spend a lot of time in Hudson Valley, and if he's listening to this podcast, they do a great job. There's a CrossFit near me that I tried to go to for a while, but it was mostly all people in their 20s, all doing things that like my 40-year-old body was like, I don't know about it. I don't know about all that. I sit down a lot at a computer. That's too much. And so I think to really match, to fill the needs of a kind of aging American population and give them an option that really is for them, that moves at a pace that makes sense for them, that teaches them the kind of movement and exercise that makes sense for their age. Not that people in their 40s can't do anything, but I'll speak for myself, from my own experience. I don't feel like I can do anything at this point. And it's nice to go to a place that can respect that, right? And I feel comfortable going and being in your hands. So yeah, I love that. I love that you're focused on that demographic. Let me ask you a little bit about kind of leadership. So clearly, you have I don't know how many employees do you have at this point?
We're probably around 30,
Okay.
most full-time team members.
Great. So spread across, 13 locations,
Yeah.
30 people. At this point, how do you describe your role in supporting your coaches, your staff, even your members across all those locations? That's another hesitation I hear from people is like, how do you even support people when everyone's so spread out? So maybe kind of walk me through the things that you do, the habits you formed to really kind of keep your finger on the pulse of your people.
For sure. And it is a challenge, right? Because it's mostly decentralized. It's not like
Yeah.
you have these two or three monster locations where you see your team every day. So what I did back from 2015 to 2020, I'll call it, where it was one location. We had a really large team at that one location. I had to. It's different, right? It's applied. It's similar, similar philosophy, but just applied a bit differently because it's more decentralized. So I think that's important. But for me, it starts with doing site visits, taking workouts at the different studios, getting to know the members, talking with the coaches, and then really empowering my leadership team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is really in the field, our regional managers, right? They're the ones that our location managers report to. So really making sure that I'm taking care of them and giving them the support and resources that they need to be successful in their role, and really getting out of their way and letting them, lead and hold their teams accountable and manage them is really important. When you're maybe starting to scale and you have two locations going on three, you are that effective regional manager. So you have
Mm-hmm.
that direct relationship with maybe the other location managers you have. But with 13, I have to take care of my regional managers, right? And they're going to take care of the team. So I think that's really important. And then just making sure that in order to keep a pulse on, I have to be in my locations from time to time. So visiting different ones at different times of the day and all that type of stuff. Getting some one-on-one time with the location manager is also important. I'll make sure I do that formally and informally from time to time, but knowing that our regionals are really going to take care of the formal side of that. So, but those are the things that come to mind, right? Is you have to be present in your locations. You have to know what's going on, and you have to be part of it. So I
Yeah.
think that's important, and you have to be okay with letting go, right, and not having to control everything and giving that control over to others, right? Like if I came in and just swooped in and shit on everything going on, right?
Yeah.
There's always things to fix. Like that wouldn't serve my direct reports well. It wouldn't serve the members well, right? It wouldn't serve my regionals direct reports well. So knowing that there's a order of operation to addressing things, but knowing that you have to understand what's going on, it's super important. So it's definitely a balance, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's really it, is being present, and then we're really intentional as a team what we do. So knowing like that there's a small staff at every location, knowing that it can maybe feel isolating at times. We're really intentional about our meeting cadence and what we're doing collectively as a team to ensure that there is FaceTime, right? And there's things that I do to communicate, whether it's with my team, whether it's a weekly newsletter that gets emailed out. We do quarterly state of the company events where I give an update on what we've accomplished, where we're going, and that type of stuff. So yeah, those are just some examples of how we've adapted since we went from one to many locations.
Nice. That's nice, Jim. That's really nice. What I hear in that, Joe, is that you're really continuing to work on keeping those relationships alive, right? Making sure you're getting FaceTime with people and you're spending quality time together, I think is really great. Constant flow of communication from what I hear, which is fantastic. And I think you put your finger on the pulse of something that I hear a lot, which is the hardest part about some of this is actually the letting go part, right? Is letting other people have complete accountability and responsibility for getting stuff done. And which means you butting in is often a bad thing. You jumping in and sharing your opinion all the time, you jumping in and quote unquote helping, is sometimes just getting in the way. So not learning to be self sufficient, not learning to do it on their own.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really important piece. Just for everyone to paint a picture, how many regional managers do you have? Any regionals do you have reporting to you that then connect with each location?
We have three. We have one in Maryland
Got it.
overseeing our two locations, and any future ones we'll do down there. And in New Jersey, we have two. We split our 11 New Jersey locations up into two different regions. So
That
that's
makes sense.
that's
That makes
currently.
sense. Yeah, thanks for painting a picture. That's it's helpful, just to imagine your org chart in our heads. Yeah. All right. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're coming to the end of our time together here, and maybe I'll end with one last question here. So a lot of people listening to this podcast, as I mentioned, are people who have already started their gym and been running it for a while, and have been thinking about scaling. So if you had kind of a 1 minute to give all those gym owners out there ready to scale your kind of best tips and advice for how to get started, what would you say?
I would say make sure it's really a path you want to go down. Number one, you have to know
Mm,
what you're optimizing for. And
mm,
I think that's really important because if you have a North Star, if you know what you're really working towards, then you also know what to say no to. Right. So for me, that meant saying, I used to do a lot more consulting in the gym space. Right. That's mostly a no for me now. Right. Just because I know what I'm working towards. So you can't say yes to everything.
yep.
And I think the more focused you can get on what you're trying to accomplish, it's gonna force you to say no. So I think that would be the biggest thing, and you have to really drill down on what your model is, right? I do still do some consulting from time to time, and I think the biggest challenge, if you get a lot of quick starts, which a lot of us are as entrepreneurs, is you jump into a second location and then you tweak things a little bit too much. Now you notice your second location is different than your first, and then your third location is different than your second, and now
Hmm.
you're scaling chaos, right? So it's okay to iterate. And I said that in my story when we went into our second. We quickly realized that we were going to even simplify things more, but then we stuck with that. We stuck with that, and that became our second, and that became the same from number 2 through 13. So we don't have, aside from our HQ location, we don't have different models that we're running. We even scaled that HQ location back after COVID because it was the perfect excuse to get rid of programs and to simplify things. So we
Yep.
went we really made some changes there. So I think you really have to understand, what are you scaling, right? What is that program that you're putting in its own four walls? What does it look like when it's done? And when I mean that, in the individual unit, how will you know what success looks like? How many members do you need? What are people paying, right? What is your ramp up time and so forth? I can keep going on and on, but I think it's painting a really clear picture of what that prototype is and then executing on that prototype. Um,
Mm,
so with the minute I have, that would probably give that
yeah.
would that would be my best answer.
You nailed it, Joe. I think that was so smart, right? I mean, get really clear on your model, paint a clear picture of what success looks like when you run that model. And I'm obsessed with your big picture question because I ask the people this question all the time, which is, you got to get clear about what you're optimizing for. And
Yeah,
I think it's such an important question, Joe. And many people just don't really. I'm going to break that apart for a second because people don't know what it means. When you go to scale, you can optimize for all kinds of things. You can optimize for fame. You can optimize for profit. You can optimize for impact. You can optimize for job creation. You can optimize for freedom of your own time. You can optimize for selling as quickly as possible. You can optimize. There's so many things you can optimize for, even when you decide to grow and scale. So getting clear, what are you in this for? What are you really doing it for? I think is such a great question. When you answer that for yourself, what's the answer, Joe?
yeah. Optimizing. I'm looking to grow a really large business that we
Yeah,
can build and have an impact and grow
yeah,
a team. That's really what we're optimizing for. We are optimizing for scale.
yeah,
I would say that. But if I wanted a lifestyle business, then this is not the route I would go down, right? And I think that's important to understand, right? Growth
yeah.
always good if it's not what is really important to you. So people maybe think that by default, like, oh, okay, like this location's running well, and the next logical step is to open up a second location, right? But I think taking a step back and really add, like, okay, what are you optimizing for? What's important to you? I think
Great.
for me, I enjoy the game, I enjoy the challenge, I enjoy growing myself, and this is it. I look at my business as my sports franchise. I wasn't good enough to be a Major League Baseball player, so this is my sports franchise, and I'm looking to grow my sports franchise. And
Yeah.
I enjoy waking up every day with the challenge of doing that. And it used to be fitness problems that we used to have, right? That we used to work on in our business. And now it's business problems. I'm looking to scale my business. So
Yeah.
I enjoy it and looking to go continue to do that.
Beautiful words. Yeah, we'll leave it there. For anyone who wants to learn more about Game Changer Fitness or follow you and your great work on the interwebs, where do they find you?
Yeah, so GameChangerFitness.com is my brand, my business. I am on Instagram. I don't know my handle. Maybe at Joe Meglio GC. Maybe I'm not sure. I'm not.
We'll find it and put it in the
Yeah,
show notes if anyone
yeah.
wants to go follow Joe.
Yeah, and if you want to get in touch, you can email me joe@GameChangerGym.com. That's my email.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this, Joe. I mean, this was a jam-packed 30 minutes worth of really great lessons and great advice. And your story is just so impressive. And I know ongoing, you're not done yet. So
Yeah.
I would love to continue to have you back on the podcast as you keep growing and learning and share all of your great wisdom with our audience. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And listeners, hope you took lots of great notes. And I will see you on the next one. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you. Bye.